Hi everyone, I'm Lee Pacchia and you're watching The Business of Law, the only web TV show focusing on the challenges and opportunities facing the legal profession. Took us a while, but we are finally getting to the law school space today. I'm happy to say joining us we have Elie Mystal from Above the Law, and he's going to talk to us about their new law school rankings. Actually, it's their second year, so it's kind of new.
Newish.
Yeah, getting less new. Why is Above the Law moving into the ranking space? Doesn't the internet have enough lists as it is already?
The internet has enough lists, but in terms of law school rankings, there's U.S. News, and then the behemoth known as U.S. News. Somebody should be saying something else, right? Somebody needs to at least attempt to give a slightly different take on this rankings game. That's what we're trying to do.
So before we get granular, what is the Elie Mystal takeaway from the 2014 rankings? What was the thing that surprised you the most?
I was really, having your students get jobs is really important to our rankings. Even single year blips really did change, in terms of if your class was less good this year than it was last year. It really did change our rankings. One of the things that we like to point out, and this is our second year of doing this, is that we're the only rankings that has that is using the updated class of 2013 employment information. U.S. News is still using the class of 2012 employment information. That's why our rankings were a little bit later.
Up-to-date stuff.
This is the most up-to-date employment information that's available to the public. And when you look at some of the differences between our rankings and U.S. News, you really feel that difference.
And speaking incredibly generally, how are things looking on the employment front?
I think we've reached the bottom. The new normal is no longer new.
I've heard that before.
It is just normal.
But I've heard that before. Why do you think that this time we're at the bottom?
Because what we're seeing is not a rebound, but what we're seeing is a plateau. So we're not seeing we're not seeing job situations get even worse for recent graduates. So I do think we've established some kind of base here. Now, whether or not we're ever going to recover, we're certainly not going to recover to the 2007 levels. How things go from here is still yet to be seen. Remember, law school applications are really down. So at some point things might balance out.
Equilibrium should be reached. Let's talk about methodology for a minute. Did anything change in the way that you put together these rankings from last year?
After a lot of discussion, we kept it entirely consistent.
Why is that? Is that do you want a couple years under your belt to figure out how this is going, or do you just think you got it right out of the gate?
I think it's more the former than the latter. We do want to see more. We want to see what happens from year to year as things change in the metrics that we have to see what kind of change that will result in schools' rankings. Now, going forward in year 3, year 4, year 5, if there's something that we feel like we're kind of consistently getting wrong, we'll revisit that and probably change some ratings or whatever. But right now in year 2, we kind of felt like, well, how do we know if we got things wrong in year 1 unless we see how different it is in year 2?
Yeah, you just need a larger data set.
Yeah.
So
the fact that the rankings are it's one of those things. As a news organization, you want to break news by having changes in the rankings. But as a rankings organization, consistency is not bad. You want to be able to show that over time there's some stability there in that list.
So last year, I brought up the methodology point because last year you guys caught an awful lot of grief because New York City schools didn't do well, and some people pointed to methodology as a reason for that. This year, however, NYU and Columbia Law School did much better. Why is that?
Again, this is why we weren't rushing to change things, right? The class of 2013 at those schools did very well in the employment market. It's another reason why I'm saying maybe we've reached some kind of plateau or bottom in the employment market where kids who go to NYU and Columbia, they're predominantly going to be going to work in New York, and those kids got jobs in New York. One of the interesting things, though, only 2 schools fell off of our list of top 50. Fell below 50 on our list, and one of them is Fordham. So what does that say? What it says, I think, is that for a long time, Fordham was kind of getting the leftovers in the NYC job market from Columbia and NYU, and maybe that didn't happen for the class of 2013 this year as much as it had happened in previous years.
Interesting. Also, University of Iowa jumped 19 spots to crack into the top 20. How
did
they do it?
I hope, and we still, these numbers are fresh. We released them on Wednesday, I believe. I hope that one of the things with Iowa's rankings, as we delve into it, is that they actually cut tuition. Now, there are a lot of schools that are saying they're cutting tuition, and really all they're doing is giving more scholarship money out by keeping their top line number as high as it's always been.
Tell me why tuition ranks so importantly in your rankings?
Yeah, because
Sorry.
because we assume that for when choosing a law school, people want to get the best job possible with the least amount of debt on the backside. And so tuition is our best, it's our best proxy for indebtedness. Now, one of the things that I've said, and every year I write a post that's called "Everything That's Wrong with Our Rankings." We would like to get a better figure for indebtedness. Tuition is only a proxy. What we would really want to know is the actual indebtedness, or God forbid, the actual default rates for each of these schools. That information isn't publicly available. We've asked the schools nicely. At this point, they haven't provided it. So tuition becomes a proxy. That said, Iowa did actually cut its tuition, and we think that might be one of the reasons why it rose so well in this year's rankings.
On the flip side, USC dropped 15 points to go from 20 to 35.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Bad year for the class of 2013. It could just be a one-year blip. I do not think that our rankings mean that USC is now a less than stellar institution. I think the class of 2013 out in that LA job market had a really rough year.
You guys also caught a lot of flack for giving Supreme Court clerkships and federal bench appointments of schools alums a lot of heavy credit in your rankings. That said, it's kind of a small data set. We're not talking about a lot of people. Any plans at Above the Law to maybe expand that category to take on other prestigious jobs in law?
Couple of things, right? One, with the actual Supreme Court clerkships. What we've it was our most.
It's like, how many people are clerking at the Supreme Court at a given time?
It was our most.
20,
it was the thing that we talked about most during the re-up this year. And what we found, based on last year's results, is that it really only works as a tiebreaker. Right? There are 9 schools that are significantly competing to have Supreme Court clerks. Now, for those 9 schools, that becomes a useful tiebreaker. It's useful, right, I think, to people who
but
are.
It also preordains them to be at the top of the list.
Sure.
Is that a problem?
No.
But it means that a school like University of Iowa, in these rankings, they're not going to get in the top 10 because they don't have any Supreme Court clerks, and that seems a little weird.
Here's what I think. If you need me to tell you that Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Chicago, if you need me to tell you that those are the top 5 law schools in America, then you probably can't get into those schools, right? I mean, those are really good schools. They're really good for a reason, and one of the reasons that they're really good is because they are able to place people in the absolute top, most prestigious jobs in the land. That doesn't mean Iowa's a bad school. That doesn't mean Iowa is not something that should be seriously considered by people who want to be practicing lawyers. But if you're going to Iowa because you want to one day clerk for Clarence Thomas or Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's probably not the best idea, right? If you're going to Iowa because you want to be a federal judge or you want to be, even a law professor, that's probably not the best use of the Iowa education. That's what I think our rankings are saying. And so while, sure, a school like Iowa is going to have a really hard time breaking into our top 5 as long as we care about things like federal clerks and federal judges and whatever, by the same token, people with top scores who might want to have those opportunities available for them probably shouldn't go to Iowa either.
Interesting stuff. Any plans at Above the Law to move into other forms of ranking? Are we going to see rankings of big law firms?
I don't know. Maybe.
Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah,
couldn't resist.
We like traffic. So
right
if people like lists on the internet. People are reading our rankings for law schools. One of the biggest questions I've gotten since we released the second year of rankings is, when are you going to do law firms? Now, the law firm space, unlike the law school space, where really there's U.S. News and nobody else, there are a lot of people who rank law firms in a lot of different ways across a lot of different metrics. And so if we were ever to do it, we'd have to find something particular that we want to say about law firms that isn't already captured on the internet.
Awesome. Elie, always a pleasure.
Thanks you for having me.
It's Elie Mystal from Above the Law. If you'd like to see more of the stuff that we're working on, be sure to go check out our YouTube channel. You can always follow us on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacchia. See you next week.